Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive, modern mystery. It's a truly cinematic story about one of the most enigmatic, isolated, and frankly baffling cities on the face of the earth. We are going to explore a sprawling metropolis that was built in absolute secrecy. And here's the kicker. It was designed not for the people who actually live in it, but to protect the rulers who built it.
Picture this. You're standing on a pristine, meticulously paved 20-lane highway. But look a little closer. It is completely devoid of traffic. There are no cars, no buses, no pedestrians. It's just these vast, empty stretches of tarmac sitting in total, eerie silence. I mean, it literally looks like a still frame from some post-apocalyptic sci-fi movie, right? But this isn't Hollywood. This is very real. This is the center of Naypyidaw, the capital of Myanmar.
So, you gotta ask yourself, why? Why on earth did a desperately poor country, a country that was actively struggling with basic infrastructure in most of its territory, pour massive, unfathomable resources into building a 20-lane highway with absolutely no cars to drive on it? Well, to understand this, we really have to uncover the incredibly secretive history behind how this entire city came to be.
$5 billion. That is the estimated price tag for constructing this mega city completely from scratch. To put that monumental figure into perspective for a second, $5 billion was roughly equal to the nation's entire annual tax revenue at the time. Just let that sink in. An entire nation's yearly budget completely drained and poured into building an empty fortress.
Part 1. A Secret in the Jungle.
The story actually starts way back in 1999. That's when Chinese contractors were quietly spotted hanging around tea shops near this really isolated town called Myanmar. But the real shock, that didn't happen until Sunday, November 6, 2005. With almost zero warning, Myanmar's military government issued this sudden, absolute order to move all government departments out of the bustling capital of Yangon. Just 5 days later, at exactly 11 a.m. on November 11th, a massive convoy of 11,000 military trucks rolled in. Under the very real threat of arrest, completely surprised civil bureaucrats were literally herded into these trucks and driven off into the jungle. And incredibly, it wasn't until 2006 that the public even learned the name of this brand new city, Naypyidaw, which roughly translates to Abode of Kings.
And they didn't just move to the suburbs either. The entire seat of power was relocated 320 kilometers north of Yangon, deep into this totally isolated, heavily forested, and incredibly mountainous inland region. So why exactly did they retreat into the jungle? To figure that out, we have to dig into the psychology of the regime at the time.
Part 2. The Master Plan.
You see, Yangon was this dense city full of colonial architecture, packed streets, and these really unpredictable, diverse crowds. Historically, it was the center of protests and political unrest. Naypyidaw, by contrast, is sprawling. It's monumental. It's quite literally built like a fortress. The leadership specifically wanted to escape all that urban heterogeneity of Yangon. They wanted to create a highly controlled, deeply isolated stronghold where popular uprisings simply couldn't gather any momentum.
But, domestic threats weren't their only concern, not by a long shot. The military junta harbored this deep paranoia about a potential U.S.-led amphibious invasion. Remember, Yangon sits right there on the vulnerable coast. By moving 320 kilometers inland, near dense mountains and major communication choke points, the military was basically trading space for time. They believed this inland fortress would provide a crucial defense in depth, which would allow them to mount a protracted guerrilla resistance if foreign powers ever actually attacked.
So breaking it down, the relocation was driven by 4 core strategic motives. First up, preventing a foreign amphibious invasion, like we just talked about. Second, strictly securing information. In Naypyidaw, they rely exclusively on hardwired fiber optics to completely avoid foreign eavesdropping on mobile or satellite networks. Third, controlling domestic uprisings by keeping the general population far away. And fourth, that central location allowed the military to project their power and a heavy psychological presence much closer to the borders of restive ethnic minority regions.
Part 3. Architecture of Paranoia.
Think about your own city for a second. Neighborhoods usually kind of blend into one another, right? Well, not here. Naypyidaw is made of rigidly segregated zones. You've got a ministry zone, a military zone, a hotel zone, and they are all separated by kilometers of lush jungle, rice paddies, and get this, golf courses. The layout is intentionally, ruthlessly compartmentalized by keeping military personnel, civil servants, and the general public literally miles apart from each other. The city itself acts as an anti-protest mechanism. It completely destroys any chance of organized collaboration.
And the control definitely doesn't stop at geography. It dictates daily life. The residential zones enforce extreme social segregation. Living quarters are assigned strictly by rank and marital status. But here is the craziest part. The roofs of the 1,200 four-story apartment blocks are actually color-coded based on which government ministry the residents work for. So Ministry of Health employees live under blue roofs, while Ministry of Agriculture staff live under green ones. It is a visually categorized, hyper-controlled hierarchy on a massive scale.
Now, if you're standing on the ground, buildings like the Ministry of Health just look, well, utilitarian, modern, maybe a bit mundane. But from above, 51 of these identical ministry buildings share a highly specific secret floor plan. The open rectangles at the ends of the buildings actually form the distinct shape of a scorpion claw.
So, why a scorpion? It's definitely not a coincidence. Naypyidaw isn't just about physical security. It is heavily steeped in superstition and propaganda. The scorpion claw is a traditional symbol in the region, widely believed to bring power, authority, and good fortune in conquest. The architecture was quite literally designed to project historical legitimacy, actively positioning the ruling generals as a continuous, unbroken lineage of native Myanmar kings.
And hey, nothing projects raw power quite like the colossal Union Parliament complex. This structure is completely separated from the rest of the city by a massive 20-lane avenue and a defensive dry moat. Notice how there is a complete lack of public space or pedestrian access anywhere near it. It is physically designed to hold the citizens at arm's length. The entire complex really reinforces the harsh reality that this is a city built to withstand a siege from its very own people.
Part 4. The Ghost Capital Today.
The sheer, surreal absurdity of Naypyidaw today is honestly hard to overstate. That giant 20-lane highway, the one specifically designed as anti-protest geometry to move tanks and troops quickly, is so incredibly vacant that the hosts of the British motoring show Top Gear actually parked their cars and played a game of soccer right in the middle of it. Seriously, the city has all this vast, unbroken infrastructure, and yet almost no organic civilian life to actually use it.
Get this, the city covers an area 78 times the size of Manhattan, yet its population density is unbelievably low. You aren't going to find bustling markets or crowded sidewalks here. Instead, the only regular pedestrians you are likely to spot are small armies of solitary, neon-clad street sweepers and manual laborers. They're just constantly out there, tending to the empty, manicured roads, maintaining the pristine illusion of a bustling metropolis.
Which brings us to a massive twist of historical irony. This city was completely conceived as an authoritarian fortress, right? A safe space to insulate a military dictatorship from democratic uprisings. Yet, as Myanmar underwent political shifts, this very same city had to host the democratic reality it was built to suppress. Opposition figures, including the famous pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi, eventually had to travel to this isolated stronghold to take their seats in the exact same parliament that was built to keep them out. So, all of this leaves us with a pretty provocative question. What happens to a propaganda city built entirely for isolation and control when the political landscape shifts? Can a sterile, compartmentalized bunker designed by lonely kings ever truly transform into a living, breathing capital for the people? It's a fascinating architectural and political puzzle, and it's one that will undoubtedly haunt the legacy of Naypyidaw for decades to come. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.